right, my name's Margie. I'm the director of the Career Center, career education team at the Career Center, sorry. And I'm going to be talking to you guys about product management, which is different from project management. And I'm going to just mute myself for a second while I ask my son to quiet down. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. No school today, so we're hopefully not going to have too many distractions. Okay, so this presentation took me a long time to put together because product management is actually pretty hard to describe. So what I ended up doing was using a lot of images and some quotes to kind of get at what this career path looks like and the skills associated with it. This quote, I think, is an excellent place to start because it kind of illustrates that the product management role requires a very distinct skill set that crosses different skill areas. So in fact, like the brain of an engineer, the heart of a designer, and the speech of a diplomat. So this is speaking to communication skills, problem solving skills, creativity, and the multiple skill sets that are associated with this role. All right, so this is text heavy. That I forgot to mention that these decks tend to be really text heavy because as I send them out, I want people to be able to go through the deck on their own rather than watch the recording, depending on their learning style. But so when you see a text heavy slide like this, you don't need to read the whole thing. I'll be really talking through some of this content, but just as an explanation for kind of the approach we take. So the challenge of defining product management is that it really does, this role crosses industries. So there's technical project management, there's more business product management, et cetera. But even within industries, the product manager role differs in terms of some of the duties and functions of that role, depending on the product itself, depending on the organization. So what we're going to focus on in this presentation are the basics. So like what are the most typical duties of a product manager. And the other thing we want to start with is clarity that this role doesn't necessarily manage anyone, right? They're not necessarily managing a team. They're managing the product. There are definitely roles in product management where you supervise someone, but that we want to make sure that it's clear that the product manager isn't the manager of everyone they're partnering with. In fact, it's beneficial for them to not be in that hierarchical structure. I liked this quote too, because it speaks to what I was talking about earlier, that one of the essences of the role of product management is that it is ambiguous and that you're doing a lot of different things at the same time. So what is product management? Essentially, the product manager oversees the development and launch of products and services. We'll get into what we mean by products in just a little bit. But they assist a team. Usually it's a team of people with different functions in their job, and we'll get into an illustration of that, to create plans and deadlines during the development of a product. And so there is confusion sometimes between product management and project management. Project management is a skill you need as a product manager, but the function product management isn't exclusively project management. I know there's a lot of, I've said the word management 1,000 times, but essentially they're the hub for communications, creating priorities, doing research, presenting ideas, and really engineering success for the product. This illustrates how different, basically the complexity of this kind of position. So for example, the tech image is what a really common way people illustrate what product management is in the world of technology. So you're often in the middle between the developers, the UX people, and then the business people or the business teams. That's how they illustrate that. The image on my right with the green product manager circle illustrates it. In some spaces, you're working with all of these teams, right? And it's going to be like you're the hub for the actual product itself, and you're going to be collaborating with customer service, marketing, strategy, et cetera. But these are two of the most common illustrations. If you Google product management and you're looking for visual representation, these are, I would say, two of the kind of foundational ones. We'll get into some other ones as well. I liked this quote because it really speaks to the rewarding aspect of this kind of role, which is essentially improving people's lives, and that's where we get into the product, but listening to customers, giving them what they need. And this is a very core function in business, because obviously if you're designing a product and you're selling a product, the product has to solve a problem. I also collected some interesting statistics about product management. A lot of people think of this as a role where you have to have a very deep knowledge of technology. That's not always the case, and only 5% of product managers know how to code. Product management roles are on the rise because an optimized product manager could increase company profits by 32%, according to 81% of respondents to this survey. And then only 28% of product managers said that they spent any time strategizing. 72% of time was spent on tactics and execution. So that's a kind of a bird's eye view of, we know that there's strategy. We also know that there's actual like operational pieces of this role. It's not just what should we do, it's also how do we then do it, and how does this move the needle. I liked this quote. This is from the director of product management at care.com, because she talks in this quote about how if you're interested in this career pathway, you have to think through what am I bringing to the table. And it illustrates that people do navigate into project or product management careers from designer roles, from engineer roles, from business roles. Like there isn't one pathway to a product management role. People are coming from all of those spaces, and the benefits, each one has a different benefit in terms of what you're bringing to the party. But this really illustrates that these are the three parts of the job, typically: the business piece, the engineering or at least technology piece, and then the designer piece of it. But people are coming from all different pathways. In fact, there's a lot of movement towards liberal arts majors considering pathways into product management because of their extreme communication skills. Okay, so in terms of what is a product, I think most of us think of product managers for Facebook or for technology tools, but really a product could be anything. And sometimes it's just a slice of something. So for example, there are product managers who only work on one part of an app. So for example, on Facebook, I don't have a Facebook anymore, so I don't actually totally remember all the parts of the app, but there's product managers for every little service they offer within that app. And in some cases, there are multiple product managers dedicated to that function. But they don't, sometimes they're spread out as far as a platform goes, and sometimes they do manage just that one little button that you have access to. Any questions so far? I know I'm going really fast, but we have 30 minutes. And I'll get you the deck afterward too. I'll also conclude with a couple of resources for upskilling and getting more information, because this is really just kind of a snapshot of the space. Some other things you need to know in terms of the product management role is that there is a very clear life cycle for product development. And this life cycle, this isn't something that, like, very few people major in something called product management, right? Like, I don't even think that major exists in most institutions, but there is a consistent approach to the development of a product. And these phases, like if you were interested in a product management role, you would probably educate yourself on product life cycles, product development, typically, but this is just a little snapshot of what a typical product life cycle looks like in terms of introduction of a product, growth of a project, maturity of a product, and then the decline of the product. In addition, oh, sorry, I forgot to put this illustration here. I peppered a couple of these throughout just to kind of, because I think they do a good job of telling a little bit of a story about what product management is. So essentially in this one, obviously mind, matter, and then moves. This is another good way to think through the parts of the product development. And I did like this quote because it is, this speaks to the entrepreneurial aspect of product management and the kind of like how rewarding and exciting it might be to help launch a new product and thinking through like the iterations that are part of it. So this is the product development process that's kind of consistent. Obviously, different companies operate differently, but this would be the process as a product manager that you would be shepherding, right? And I think this gives you the clearest picture of what this role does, because you are helping to collect user problems, brainstorm solutions. You're not the only person doing that. This is the process across all of the teams, but you are communicating around what are user problems, what are solutions. You're working with designers. In the planning phase, you're talking to the marketing folks, you're participating or you're collecting customer interviews, you're road mapping and making a business case. You're working on the business side of things. In the development phase, you're creating timelines. You're identifying the specific features of the product that have to be in the product. You're also collecting user stories, specs. You're estimating how long things will take. So there's like the time management piece of it. In the iterating phase, you are shepherding prototypes, collecting early feedback, and you're beta testing and shepherding that whole process. In the launch phase, you're really now in conversation with the marketing team, the legal team, the PR team, the sales team, and the public launch is part of this phase. Steady state is when you are collecting metrics on the use and purchases. Like this whole process spans from the beginning till the end of this product. But you are also talking to marketing and you're doing assessment there. And then in the maintain or kill phase, that's when you're tracking your competition, you're looking at your return on investment, and then you're potentially creating a plan for sunsetting a product. If that's part of where, if you're in the kill phase, this would be the work you do. So this slide really illustrates more than anything else, these are the parts of your job. And depending on the product, obviously some of these parts, the actual collecting user feedback would be very different for a, let's say, a media company versus like an app or a software development company. But essentially, you're doing all of these things. So if that mix of things appeals to you, then you might be interested in a product management role. This is another illustration I thought that was really interesting in terms of speaking to really this relationship between the customer, the business folks, and then the actual designers who are making the thing. Another illustration of how really heavily overlapped these areas are. So I do see a question in the chat. What's the difference between a product manager and a project manager? The product manager is managing a product. They are doing that in whatever way they decide to. The project manager is really laying out, this is how this one thing is going to get done, this one thing. And they are using probably other parameters to decide exactly what that timelines are and all this. So I would say the product manager is in a different, they're using project management skills to plan, but they're also presenting, they're also communicating, they're also problem solving, they're also researching, they're also like, so project management is just one part of product management. I'm not sure if that fully captures, there's actually a lot of great sources I can share with you that explain the difference between project management and product management. But the way I see it is that overall, the product manager is using project management skills, but they're also using design skills. They're also using creativity. They're also using communication skills and creating their own process. I hope that made some sense. To get a little more like kind of specific, there are different types of, these aren't the only types of product managers, but the one we most often think of is the technical product manager. So, and a lot of these folks, like, it's not to say that you have to know how to code and do all this, but typically folks in these roles do have some knowledge around technology, and they work around product managing technology products. An internal product manager is someone who manages products for the business use. And, you know, in preparing for this deck, I did see a recommendation that the internal product manager is sometimes the easier role to get for an emerging product manager. So I don't know, like, obviously, like, this isn't my career space. I'm just kind of like upskilling on this to share some of this information, but that's something to think about. The other section is consumer product managers. So you're thinking about, I mean, it's not, obviously technology is a product in and of itself that we sell in the market, but this would be thinking through, this is distinctive from technology product managers because we're talking about different kinds of products here. Like I said, it could be media, it could be healthcare. I mean, that's what's interesting is there's some rotational programs like CVS has a product management rotational program. And we're thinking product management only Facebook, Google, Apple, but really like healthcare is a whole space for this as well. So here are some of the skills that are core to success in a product management role. And I've divided them by soft skills and hard skills. This really does illustrate again how this person is a little bit of a unicorn in that they do have all of these soft skills as far as listening, organizing, storytelling, empathy, etc. But they also have some knowledge space. And this is where it really becomes clear how you can navigate into a product management role from almost any pathway if you have these skills. Essentially, basic business competencies, some knowledge about the process itself, and this is kind of where we're sharing this information as a way to start that piece. The project management skills or prioritization skills, research and analysis skills. This is really important because you have to like be able to research whatever the product is and the market for it. Some familiarity with economics in terms of like what, you know, the basics around how do businesses succeed. And then knowledge of development principles. Now that's important, that word principles, and this is really, that's specific to kind of a technology product development role, but you're not developer level in this role. Not to say that you couldn't be a developer and navigate into product management, but you don't have to be. You need to understand the principles though of whatever it is that, whatever kind of product that you are managing or shepherding. This is another illustration that I think kind of speaks to that unicorn or hybrid skill set, which is essentially like you do have to have business opportunity, you do have to be entrepreneurial, you do need to be a communicator, you do want to be empathetic, curious, etc. So starting a career in product management, we like to make some of this really actionable. And this is some information around like an entry-level role would be associate product manager. If you're in your career, midway in your career, and you're doing a pivot, you don't necessarily need to start at the entry-level role. So this isn't for everyone. There's, you know, product manager roles. If you have a certain amount of business experience or technology experience, you could conceivably pivot laterally. But this is just at least a clear entry point for product managers who are emerging into their field. Basically, they're looking for you to demonstrate that you understand what product, I'm never going to not mix that up, what product management is, and that you have a clear interest and passion for the customer. It's really, again, like this is really reiterating, this isn't a major, this isn't something that you can necessarily get badged for, although there's increasing badge programs and courses that you can take. But it is more about a specific combination of a skill set. And it's that skill set that we've been talking about, you know, from the beginning. But as an example of the kind of the questions you could get, one recruiter asks candidates to tell her about something they've recently learned. And that's kind of, this is a really good example of how this role isn't like the kind of role where you take a test and they would know you're good at it. They would have to hear from you, this is my approach to problem solving. This is my approach to, this is my curiosity. This is my creativity. And I will say, like, and I'll share some sources with you, but there's so much on the internet around this pathway. And of course, there's things that cost money, but there's a lot of free opportunities or inexpensive opportunities to upskill in this space. One example here, there's a webinar coming up. When I put this deck together, I was collecting a lot of resources. This webinar is by a company called Thinkful that offers training, but this webinar I believe is free. So they will probably try and sell their training, but at least is an interesting experience to like see how they talk about the difference between product management versus technical project management. And that's coming up on the 30th. There's also a great article that this link will work for you. It's how to become a product manager according to 3 experts. So it's 3 folks who are talking about exactly how to navigate into that space. And then there's some trend heavy technology sites that are probably good for folks who are interested in technical product management, because these are places that are, you know, where you're going to collect some of that language that you'd want to speak. I'm going to also show you really quickly, well, I'll make sure you know what the Career Center can do. Like, we love helping students navigate. If you're interested in a pivot, if you want to make a resume that looks good for a product management role, we're happy to talk to you. We have a technology and design career community, and the folks who advise in that community have deep knowledge of this space. We also have an email resume review service. I just give a quick warning that there's a 5 to 7 day delay, and there's literally no delay on meeting with an advisor. So why not just make the appointment? We have a career library of a ton of content around resumes and cover letters. We also want to make sure everybody knows, I know a lot of you guys are grad students or alumni, but for any undergrads, there are a lot of 2-credit courses that sometimes help to basically take 10 weeks to create a career toolkit, which would be your resume, cover letter, et cetera, or do a search during those 10 weeks. Like, it's sometimes nice to have that accountability of a class. And we do have a pivot class as well in terms of folks who are interested in the pivot. I believe these are all undergrad only. Let me pull out of that and take you also to, in preparing for this class, I signed up during a sale on Udemy. Udemy is a basically provides courses, online courses in a wide variety of topics. I knew I was going to be developing this slide deck, so I signed up for this course. I got it on sale for like $11.99 because Udemy has like really great sales sometimes. And this is a good example of a really inexpensive way to engage. So I'm just going to quickly show you, and this isn't meant to be a commercial for Udemy. There's all kinds of other providers, but you can see that it's taking me to where I left off. But if you go to course content, you can see that there's just hours and hours and hours of videos from folks who are in product management roles talking about lean product development, the product development process, et cetera, et cetera. So this is also just a reminder that these exist out there. I don't want to see anybody paying hundreds of dollars for this kind of stuff, but every once in a while Udemy will have a sale. I don't know what its normal price is for this course. It might not actually be that expensive without a sale, but just wanted to share that for those of you who are seriously interested in these pathways, there's plenty of resources out there for you, including this kind of thing. I'm going to stop share and see if anybody has a question. Can't believe I went through it so fast. I see a couple questions here. Resources in regards to storytelling. There's a lot of great storytelling courses. You wouldn't believe how great some of these are. I'm going to actually really quickly find a link. I wonder. There's one website that shows all of that like helps you curate a list of courses for any kind of content. And I put it in I'm just pulling it out of a presentation I did on 5 free online certificates. And I'm going to throw it in the chat for you because this website is a really good resource. And I'm for some reason not remembering what it's called at all. Let me pull this up. And then I see another question. How can a senior software developer move into product development? Oh, yeah, that's a great example of where I would say that should probably be a lateral move. I don't think that would necessarily make sense for you to go straight into entry level. And that one article that I talked about from 5 experts, there's definitely They have specific advice for that. But what you would be doing is you would be kind of recreating your brand. It's not a hard pivot, it's a soft pivot, but you would think about, okay, how am I going to demonstrate some of these skills? The other thing is you'll definitely want to do networking into these spaces. Like for any pivot or any move, I'm a big fan of informational interviews and making sure that you're talking to people in the field. And that actually really speaks to, let me quickly grab this link. Digital defined. Sorry, multitasking. So the link I'm putting in the chat is a website called Digital Defined, and it's a really great resource. Now, I will say one thing: they do have sponsorship from some of the companies, but in my use of this site, it's actually been a pretty robust tool for figuring out the cheapest courses on any of the content areas I'm interested in. But this, I was talking a little bit about networking. Is it more common that product managers are internally sourced versus externally recruited? I mean, across every career path, 85% of jobs are never posted. So we know that there's a lot of internal stuff happening and networking based stuff happening. So I think that that just speaks to how important it is to get out there and do that networking, so that, and it doesn't make you internal, obviously. But the other thing is to look for those rotational programs. Let me pull up, and a rotational program is not always for people who have recently graduated. It can be sometimes, but some of these programs are, they're trying to, because this major doesn't exist, this is the way people are training, basically, product managers for the work they want to do. I'm going to add a link in here. This is from 2019, so I don't know, it feels like 100 years ago, but this is a list of 8 associate product manager programs. And some of these are rotational. I don't see CVS on here. I only know the CVS one because they came and recruited for that program. This actually is interesting. CVS came to Wellesley, which is a liberal arts college in Massachusetts, to recruit for product management. So that tells you everything you need to know. They were recruiting at a liberal arts institution. Now, obviously, we had folks with business backgrounds and we had folks with technology backgrounds there as well. But I think that speaks to how hybridized this career space is. But I think that so in terms of making a pivot or pursuing a different career pathway than you already planned, or an interesting pathway that doesn't, like, where you don't have specific experience, networking, brand management, and really thinking through, how am I going to create a brand that speaks to the needs that this employer has in this role. And that's where I do think that getting into a free course, getting into a webinar or something like that is a great place to start making that shift. Are there other questions that I can answer? I know this is like super fast, and I will be sending you all the slide deck with all the links working as well as a recording, but are there other questions about how the Career Center can help? All right, I'm gonna quickly, oh yikes, I almost forgot to do this. I do a poll at the end of all of our events. We're collecting metrics on the work that we're doing. So if you could answer some quick poll questions for me, and I'll probably, I do see a more updated article on these programs. I will add these links to the follow-up email, but this is from productschool.com, and it's everything you need to know about an associate product manager program. Thank you so much for coming. I'm doing a design thinking skills lab in a couple weeks. I'm doing an interviewing workshop, I think next week. So there's still some stuff happening this winter. We'd love for you to check out all of our events on Handshake. And if you have any questions, I'm going to put my email in here and you can follow up with me. I see one of my train friends. Hi, train friend. It's been a long time since we were here at Lombard. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your weekend. All right. Bye.